Listen well, my children, for this is a story the mountains still remember. In the valley of Nambara, where mist clings to the earth like forgotten prayers, there stood a village blessed by ancestors. Every child born there came into the world beneath the sound of the blessing drum, a sacred instrument that echoed the will of those who came before us. But one night everything changed. A woman named Kefi lay screaming in labor as storm clouds gathered overhead. The midwives beat the drum, calling the ancestors to welcome the child. Thunder rolled. Lightning split the sky. And then, just as the baby's head crowned, the drum fell silent. Not a whisper. Not an echo. Just terrible, unnatural quiet. The baby girl was born with eyes that glowed faintly blue in the darkness. The midwife gasped and stumbled backward. Kefi reached for her daughter, but before her fingers touched the child's skin, blood poured from her mouth. By dawn, Kefi was dead and the baby's father, Olu, had not spoken a single word. The villagers whispered one thing, "Cursed child." And so, the girl was named Asha, which means life. But in Nambara, she would only know rejection. Years passed like slow-moving clouds. Asha grew into a small, quiet girl with eyes that seemed too old for her face. She lived in a hut at the edge of the village with her father, who still had not spoken since the night she was born. His silence was heavier than stone. The children of Nambara never played with her. When she walked to the well, they scattered like birds before a storm. Mothers pulled their sons and daughters close, whispering warnings. Do not look her in the eye. Do not speak her name after dark. Asha learned early that loneliness had a taste, bitter and cold like unripe fruit. Yet she never cried where others could see. Instead, she smiled, a small, knowing smile that confused the villagers even more. She helped where she could. When old Mama Diji's roof leaked, Asha climbed up at night and fixed it with grass and mud. When the baker's son twisted his ankle, she left herbs at his doorstep. No one ever knew it was her. And no one ever thanked the shadow who moved through their lives like wind, unseen and unheard. But Asha carried a secret heavier than all the village's scorn. Every night, when the moon climbed high and the compound fell silent, she slipped out of her hut and walked barefoot to the river's edge. There, she knelt on the smooth stones and dipped her fingers into the cool, flowing water. And the river spoke back. Not in words the ear could hear, but in whispers that filled her chest and made her bones hum. The voices belonged to the ancestors, the same ones who had refused to drum for her birth. They called her name softly, like a lullaby wrapped in warning. Asha, they said, you were not cursed. You were chosen. She trembled the first time she heard it. Chosen for what? The ancestors never explained fully, only repeated the same strange prophecy. Beneath this village sleeps a spirit, ancient and powerful. It is bound by blood and sacrifice. One day the seal will break. And only you can stop what rises. Asha's heart pounded. How? She whispered. But the water only rippled in response, and beneath its surface, something glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. As Asha grew older, the village of Nambara began to suffer. First the rains came late. Then they did not come at all. The fields that once gave yam and cassava now cracked like broken pottery. The wells that had never run dry began to show their muddy bottoms. Fear spread faster than wildfire. The village chief, a proud man named Orji, called a meeting under the great baobab tree. The elders sat in a circle, their faces grim. The people gathered around, murmuring anxiously. Chief Orji stood and raised his staff. The spirits are angry, he declared. Someone among us has offended them. Eyes turned. Slowly, like vultures circling a carcass, the villagers began to look toward the edge of the gathering where Asha stood alone, her head bowed. Whispers grew louder. It is her. The cursed one. She came of age this season. Among the crowd, Chief Orji's daughter Lami watched Asha with narrowed eyes. Lami was beautiful, with skin like polished bronze and a laugh that made young men foolish. But beneath her beauty lived envy, sharp and green. She hated the way Elder Bayo, the oldest and wisest man in Nambara, always looked at Asha with something close to reverence. Despite the hatred that surrounded her like smoke, Asha's kindness never wavered. She continued to help in secret, moving through the village like a ghost with gentle hands. She mended torn baskets. She left water gourds outside homes where the sick lay groaning. She sang soft songs over dying plants, willing them to grow. One evening, Elder Bayo saw her. He was returning from prayer at the shrine when he spotted Asha kneeling beside a widow's garden, pressing seeds into the dry earth with her bare fingers. Her lips moved and whispered words he could not hear, but the air around her shimmered faintly as if responding to her presence. Bayo's breath caught in his throat. He had seen that shimmer before long ago when Asha's mother, Kefi, was still alive. Kefi had been different too, blessed by the ancestors in ways the village never fully understood. She had been a guardian, though she never spoke of it openly. And now, seeing Asha kneeling in the dirt, glowing faintly under the moon, Bayo realized the truth. The girl was not cursed. She was sacred. But the village, blinded by fear, could not see it. And that blindness, Bayo feared, would cost them all dearly. Lami's jealousy grew like thorns in her chest. She could not understand why Elder Bayo looked at Asha the way he did, why the cursed girl seemed untouched by the hatred around her. It infuriated Lami. She was Chief Orji's daughter. She was admired. She was beautiful. Yet Asha, silent and strange, held something Lami could never possess: peace. One night, Lami decided to follow her. She waited until the compound was asleep, then crept after Asha's shadow as it moved toward the river. Her heart pounded with fear and excitement. What was the cursed girl doing in the dark? At the river's edge, Lami hid behind a cluster of tall grass and watched. Asha knelt on the stones and placed her hands into the water. For a moment nothing happened. Then the river began to glow. Soft blue light pulsed beneath the surface, spreading outward like ripples from a thrown stone. Asha's lips moved, speaking to something Lami could not see. Terror and rage twisted inside Lami's chest. She stepped out from her hiding place and screamed, "Witch? You speak with demons?" Asha spun around, her eyes wide with shock. Behind Lami, other villagers appeared from the darkness, drawn by the scream. They saw the glowing water. They saw Asha kneeling. And they believed the worst. The next morning, Asha stood before the village council. Her hands were bound with rope, her father stood silent and broken in the corner, and the crowd pressed close, shouting accusations. Lami stood beside her father, Chief Orji, her face twisted with false concern. "She summoned spirits in the night," Lami said loudly. "I saw it with my own eyes. The water glowed at her touch. She is the reason our crops fail. She is the reason the rains do not come." The villagers roared in agreement. Mothers clutched their children. Men raised their fists. Only Elder Bayo stood and raised his hand for silence. "Wait," he said, his voice trembling with age and authority. "You do not understand what you are seeing. This girl is not your enemy." But Chief Orji shook his head. "The people have spoken, Elder. We cannot risk the anger of the spirits. Asha must leave Nambara before nightfall." Asha said nothing. Her eyes were calm, though tears gathered at the edges. She looked once at her father, who finally met her gaze. In his eyes she saw sorrow, love, and something else: understanding. He had always known. He had always carried the weight of her secret. Then the ground trembled. Just once. A low rumble like distant thunder. The villagers froze. From beneath the council floor, a faint whisper echoed up through the cracks. And Asha closed her eyes, knowing the time had come. That night, Asha did not leave the village. Instead, she lay awake in her hut, listening to the earth beneath her. It groaned softly, like something ancient stirring from sleep. The whispers of the ancestors grew louder in her mind, urgent and desperate. "The seal is breaking, child. You must be ready." Asha's hands trembled. She had always known this day would come, but she had hoped for more time. Time to prepare. Time to say goodbye. But fate does not wait for readiness. It simply arrives like rain or death. In her dream that night, she saw it clearly: a vast chamber beneath the village, carved from stone and filled with water. At its center, a figure knelt, wrapped in glowing chains. The chains pulsed with red light, cracking slowly, one link at a time. The figure's head lifted, and its eyes, burning like embers, locked onto Asha's. "Soon," it whispered. "Soon I will be free." Asha woke with a gasp, drenched in sweat. She stumbled out of bed and looked down at the floor of her hut. Thin cracks had appeared in the dried mud, spreading like veins across the ground. She knelt and pressed her palm against them. They were warm. And beneath her hand, something pulsed, steady and strong, like a heartbeat waiting to explode. By morning, the village had woken to a new horror. Every well in Nambara had turned to dust. Women screamed as they lowered their buckets and pulled up nothing but dry, cracked earth. The river, once flowing and clear, had slowed to a trickle. Its banks were exposed, revealing stones that had not seen sunlight in generations. Panic spread like sickness. People fainted in the heat. Children cried for water. Chief Orji called another emergency meeting, his face gray with fear. "This is her doing," he said, pointing toward Asha's hut. "The cursed child has brought this upon us." But Elder Bayo stepped forward, his voice loud and sharp. "Fools! You blame the one person who can save you. Open your eyes before it is too late. The crowd murmured, confused. Lami, standing beside her father, felt a flicker of doubt. She had wanted Asha gone, yes. But she had not wanted this. She had not wanted the village to die. That night, Asha felt the spirit stirring beneath the river. It was waking and its fury was immense. She could feel it pressing against the seal, testing the ancient bonds that held it. The ancestors' voices grew frantic. You must go to the river, Asha. You must face it. Only your blood can renew the seal. Only your sacrifice can save them. Asha's chest tightened. She had always known the cost. But knowing and accepting are two different things. Still, she rose from her mat, wrapped a cloth around her shoulders and walked into the night. Elder Bayo found her before she reached the river. He had been watching, waiting, knowing this moment would come. He grabbed her arm gently, his old hands trembling. Child, he whispered, I know what you plan to do. Asha looked at him with calm, sad eyes. Then you know I have no choice. Bayo's face crumpled. Your mother made the same choice many years ago. She sealed the spirit with her life. And now it demands yours. Asha's breath caught. My mother? She was a guardian too? Bayo nodded slowly. Yes. The blood of the river's keeper flows through you. That is why the drums did not sound at your birth. The ancestors were silent because they were mourning. They knew what would be asked of you one day. Tears spilled down Asha's cheeks. For the first time in her life she understood. She was not cursed. She was chosen. Born to carry a burden no one else could bear. Born to die so others could live. Go then, Bayo said, his voice breaking. But know this, the village will remember you. I will make sure of it. Asha nodded, squeezed his hand once, and walked toward the river as the earth trembled beneath her feet. The ground split open with a sound like thunder. Villagers poured out of their huts, screaming as cracks spread through the compound like lightning. From the center of the village, where the old shrine stood, a fountain of light erupted into the sky. And then it rose. The spirit, a being of impossible beauty and terror. Its body was made of fire and water, twisting together in a dance of chaos. Its eyes burned white-hot and its voice, when it spoke, shook the very bones of the earth. I am free. The villagers fell to their knees, covering their faces. Children wailed. Men and women alike trembled with primal fear. Chief Orji, for all his pride, collapsed in the dirt, unable to speak. Only Asha stood. She walked slowly through the chaos, her bare feet steady on the trembling ground. She did not run. She did not scream. She simply walked toward the spirit, her eyes locked on its burning gaze. Stop, she said, her voice soft but clear. The spirit turned to her, and for a moment, its fury paused. It tilted its head, studying her. You, it whispered. You carry the blood of the one who bound me. Asha nodded. Yes, and I offer it freely. Take my life. Spare them. The spirit's laughter was like wine through a canyon, vast and echoing. You would die for them? For the ones who cursed you, cast you out, called you evil? Asha's voice did not waver. Yes. The spirit leaned closer, its heat washing over her like a wave. Why? Asha closed her eyes. Because they did not know what they were doing. Because fear makes people cruel. And because someone must break the cycle. For a long moment, the spirit was silent. Then it spoke softer now. Your mother said the same words. She offered herself willingly and I took her life. But the seal weakened over time. Blood cannot hold forever. Asha opened her eyes. Then take mine. Renew it. Let this be the end. The spirit reached out one burning hand. But before it could touch her, a voice rang out. No. Elder Bayo staggered forward, tears streaming down his face. Please, not again. Not another life. The spirit turned its gaze to him. This is the price. It has always been the price. And Asha, with tears running down her cheeks, stepped into the spirit's embrace. Light exploded across the valley. Asha's body dissolved into pure radiance, her form becoming mist, then rain, then nothing. The spirit roared, but it was not a roar of triumph. It was a roar of sorrow. Then from the sky the drums began to beat. Not the village drums, but the blessing drum of the ancestors, echoing from the heavens. The rhythm was slow and mournful, a song of honor and farewell. The spirit's form began to shimmer and fade. The fire cooled. The water stilled. And as it sank back into the earth, it whispered one final thing. She is with us now. She is eternal. The ground sealed itself. The cracks closed. And from the sky rain began to fall. Soft at first, then stronger, drenching the village in water they had not felt in months. The villagers stood in shock, faces turned upward, mouths open, tasting the blessing they did not deserve. At the river's edge where Asha had last stood, a single white lotus bloomed. It glowed faintly in the rain, pulsing with soft blue light. The next morning the village woke to life again. Water flowed in the wells. The river ran clear and strong. The fields glistened with dew, and the air smelled of earth and hope. But the people did not celebrate. They walked through the compound in silence, their faces heavy with guilt. They remembered the girl they had cast out. They remembered her kindness, her silence, her gentle smile. And they remembered how they had repaid her, with hatred, fear, and cruelty. Lami knelt by the river, staring at the white lotus. Her hands shook. Tears streamed down her face. She had been the one to call Asha a witch. She had been the one to lead the mob. And now the girl she envied was gone, sacrificed for people who did not deserve saving. Lami opened her mouth to speak, to beg forgiveness, but no sound came. Her voice was gone. She touched her throat in panic, but nothing changed. The ancestors had taken it, a curse for her lies. She would spend the rest of her life in silence, just as Asha had lived hers. Elder Bayo stood before the village, his face lined with grief. He raised his staff and spoke, his voice carrying over the crowd. Listen to me, people of Nambara. I will tell you the truth you refuse to see. He told them everything. About Asha's mother, Kefi, who had been a guardian. About the ancient spirit sealed beneath the village. About Asha, who was born not cursed but chosen, destined to carry the burden her mother had left behind. She was never your enemy, Bayo said, his voice breaking. She was your salvation. And you cast her out. You called her evil when she was the most sacred among you. The villagers wept openly. Mothers clutched their children. Men fell to their knees. Chief Orji, proud and stubborn, covered his face with his hands and sobbed. We must honor her, Bayo said. We must never forget what she gave. And so the villagers began to build. They built a shrine by the river, carved from white stone. They placed the lotus at its center, preserved in water that never grew stale. And every year, on the anniversary of her sacrifice, they gathered to beat the drums for the girl who was born in silence but died in glory. Months passed. Seasons turned. The rains came gently and regularly, nourishing the fields. The village of Nambara prospered as it had not in years. But prosperity brought no peace to the hearts of those who remembered. Children born that year bore a strange mark, tiny flecks of blue in their eyes, like pieces of sky trapped in their gaze. The elders whispered that it was Asha's blessing, a sign that her spirit watched over them. One evening, a young boy named Kofi wandered to the shrine. He was curious and fearless the way children often are. He knelt beside the lotus and reached out to touch it. His mother screamed from the path, "No! Do not touch the sacred flower." But Kofi's fingers had already brushed the petals. The lotus pulsed with light, and from somewhere deep and distant, the drums began to beat softly just once. The boy gasped. He heard a voice, gentle and warm, whispering in his ear. "Do not be afraid." Kofi's mother ran to him, pulling him back. But the boy smiled. "She is kind," he said. "She is not angry." And for the first time the villagers understood. Asha had forgiven them. Years later, when Elder Bayo was old and frail, he sat by the river with the children of Nambara gathered around him. They loved his stories, especially the ones about the ancestors and the spirits who walked among them. "Tell us about the Lotus Girl," they begged. Bayo smiled, though his eyes were sad. "I will tell you. But you must promise to remember." He told them of Asha. Of her silence and her kindness. Of the river that spoke to her and the spirit that demanded her life. He told them how she walked into the light without fear, how the rains returned, and how the village learned too late what they had lost. "The purest hearts," Bayo said softly, "often bear the heaviest burdens. And the greatest mistake we make is mistaking silence for weakness, kindness for ignorance." The children listened wide-eyed. One small girl asked, "Is she still here?" Bayo looked out at the river where the white lotus still floated, glowing faintly under the moon. "Yes," he said. "She is always here. In the rain. In the river. In the drums that beat for her every year. She is part of Nambara now, woven into the very earth we walk on." But not everyone had learned. There were still some in the village who whispered that Asha had been a witch, that her sacrifice was trickery, that the ancestors had been deceived. These were the bitter ones, the ones whose pride could not bend. One such man was Emeka, a hunter who had lost his wife to sickness during the drought. He blamed Asha for her death, convinced that the cursed girl had poisoned the village with her presence. Even now, with the rains returned and the crops flourishing, he refused to honor her memory. One night, Emeka went to the shrine in secret. He planned to destroy the lotus, to prove that Asha was no guardian, just a girl who had died like any other. He raised his machete high. But before the blade could fall, the drums began to beat. Loud. Furious. The ground beneath Emeka's feet trembled, and the river rose suddenly, surging over its banks. Water wrapped around his legs, pulling him down. He screamed, thrashing, but the river held him firm. Then a voice, soft and sad, "Why do you hate me still?" Emeka froze. He looked up, and there, standing on the water, was Asha. Her form was translucent, made of light and mist, but her eyes were the same, calm, knowing, forgiving. "I gave my life for you," she whispered. "And you would repay me with this?" Emeka's machete fell from his hands. He wept. The river released him, and Emeka crawled to the shore, gasping and broken. He never spoke of what he saw that night, but his hatred died with his pride. He became one of the shrine's most devoted caretakers, spending his days tending the flowers and keeping the path clear. Word of the encounter spread, whispered in low tones around cooking fires. Some believed it, some did not. But one thing was certain: no one ever tried to harm the shrine again. The village learned, slowly, to live with gratitude instead of fear. They learned to speak Asha's name with reverence. They learned to teach their children the story of the girl born in silence who saved them all. And on quiet nights, when the moon was full and the river sang softly, people swore they could hear her voice in the water, humming a lullaby that had no words but filled the heart with peace. Elder Bayo grew weaker with each passing season. His bones ached and his eyes grew dim. But his mind remained sharp, and his love for Asha's memory never faded. He visited the shrine every day, speaking to the lotus as if it could hear him. "I am sorry," he would say. "I am sorry we did not see you clearly. I am sorry I could not save you." One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned gold, Bayo knelt by the river for the last time. He was tired, so tired. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I am ready." The lotus glowed brighter and the drums began to beat softly. Bayo felt a hand on his shoulder, warm and gentle. He opened his eyes and saw her, Asha, radiant and whole, smiling at him with a peace he had never seen in life. "Thank you," she said, "for remembering, for honoring, for believing." Bayo's eyes filled with tears. "Will you forgive us?" Asha's smile widened. "I already have." And with that, Elder Bayo closed his eyes and did not wake again. They found him the next morning, still kneeling by the river, his face peaceful, a faint smile on his lips. The village mourned Elder Bayo, but they buried him with honor, his grave beside the shrine. He had been Asha's greatest defender in life, and now he rested beside her memory in death. The drums beat for him just as they beat for Asha. And the people of Nambara understood, finally, that some bonds are stronger than life, stronger than death. The bond between guardian and elder, between sacrifice and witness, between the one who gives and the one who remembers. Years continued to pass. The story of Asha became legend, then myth, then sacred truth. Travelers who visited Nambara were told the tale, and they carried it back to their own villages. The story spread across the land, growing with each telling, until Asha's name was known far beyond the valley of Nambara. And still the white lotus bloomed. Still the rains came. Still the drums beat once a year, echoing the ancestors' pride. One day, a young woman named Amara came to Nambara. She was a stranger, a traveler from a distant village, and she carried a heavy burden, guilt. Her own people had cast her out, calling her cursed because she spoke to spirits no one else could see. She had heard of Asha's story and had come seeking answers. Was she truly blessed? Amara asked the villagers. Or was it just a story to make sense of tragedy? The people led her to the shrine. They told her to kneel and speak to the lotus. Amara did, her voice trembling. "If you are there," she whispered, "please show me. I need to know I am not alone." The lotus pulsed with light. The river sang. And Amara heard a voice clear and strong, "You are not cursed. You are chosen. Walk your path with courage." Amara wept, but this time her tears were not from sorrow. They were from relief. She stayed in Nambara for 3 days, learning the rituals, honoring the shrine. And when she left, she carried Asha's story back to her own people, planting seeds of understanding where there had only been fear. Decades passed. The children who had been born with blue flecks in their eyes grew into adults, and they had children of their own. The story of Asha was taught in every home, passed down like a sacred heirloom. But time has a way of softening edges, of turning truth into legend. Some began to forget the details. Some questioned whether Asha had truly existed or if she was simply a parable, a lesson wrapped in myth. Then one year the rains did not come. Not as punishment but as a test. The villagers panicked, fearing they had angered the ancestors again. They gathered at the shrine, beating the drums, calling out to Asha's spirit. And the lotus, which had bloomed for decades without fail, began to wilt. Fear gripped Nambara. Had they forgotten something? Had they dishonored her memory? Chief Adana, granddaughter of Chief Orji, stood before the people. "We have grown comfortable," she said. "We have taken her sacrifice for granted. We must remember why she gave her life, not for our comfort but for our survival. We must live as she lived, with kindness, with sacrifice, with love." The people wept and repented. They fasted. They prayed. They served one another as Asha had once served them. And on the seventh day the lotus bloomed again, brighter than ever. The rains returned, gentle and sure. The lesson was learned, but it would need to be learned again and again, as all lessons do. Each generation would face its own test, its own moment of forgetting. And each time, the story of Asha would pull them back, reminding them of the price paid for their peace. The shrine became a place of pilgrimage. People came from across the land to honor the Lotus Girl, to pray for guidance, to seek forgiveness. Miracles were reported. The sick healed, the lost found, the broken made whole. And always, the drums beat once a year, a rhythm that had become as much a part of Nambara as the river itself. One evening, an old woman sat by the shrine, her granddaughter beside her. The child asked, "Grandmother, do you think Asha is happy now?" The old woman smiled. "I think she is at peace. And I think she watches over us still, hoping we will remember what she taught us." "What did she teach us?" The old woman looked at the lotus, glowing softly in the fading light. "That the greatest strength is not in power but in sacrifice. That silence can hold more wisdom than 1,000 words. And that love, true love, is willing to give everything even when it is not deserved." And so, my children, the story ends where it began, with a drum that once fell silent and now beats with eternal pride. Asha, the girl born without sound, became the song the ancestors sing forever. If you visit Nambara today, you will see the shrine by the river. You will see the white lotus still blooming after all these years. You will hear the drums on the night of her remembrance, and you will feel the rain that falls gently, like tears of gratitude. But the true lesson of Asha's story is not in the shrine or the lotus or the drums. It is in the hearts of those who remember. It is in the choice to see beyond fear, to honor the silent, to protect the kind. The villagers learned too late what Asha was hiding. She carried their salvation all along. She bore the burden of their survival, and she gave her life so they could live. Never mistake silence for weakness. Never confuse kindness with ignorance. And never forget that the purest hearts often bear the heaviest burdens. This is the story of Asha, the Lotus Girl, the guardian who gave everything. May her memory never fade. May her lesson never be forgotten. And may we all, in our own way, learn to love as she loved, fiercely, quietly, and without condition. The drums have spoken. The story is told. Remember her.